You wearing that patch for fun? Do you even know what unit that is? Three young soldiers burst into laughter when they saw the small woman wearing a Grey Wolf unit patch on her sleeve. She didn't say a word, just stood up, turned around, and slowly pulled down her collar. A dark, scarred tattoo appeared. The entire mess hall went dead silent. Meet Isla Carter, 32 years old. Small frame, brown hair pulled back tight, sun-weathered skin, quiet eyes that seemed to hold secrets. She'd just been assigned as a logistics technician at Greyfield Training Base. On her left sleeve, she wore an old patch, the Grey Wolf emblem, a symbol that belonged to one of the most elite special operations units in the military. The moment she walked into the mess hall, three young soldiers spotted it and started laughing. "Did you buy that patch on eBay?" "The Grey Wolf unit doesn't take soldiers that small." One of them pointed at her arm with a smirk. "Do you have any idea how many people have died wearing that logo? You're disrespecting them." Ayla didn't respond. She grabbed her food tray, sat in a corner, and kept her eyes down. Despite having complete paperwork and clearance, she'd never mentioned anything about her battlefield past to anyone. In the eyes of her new colleagues, she was just a small woman, quiet, maybe a little too serious, maybe trying too hard to look tough. The whispers followed her everywhere. "She thinks she's some kind of war hero. Probably got that patch from a surplus store. Someone should tell her to take it off before she embarrasses herself." But Isla kept wearing it every single day. She'd arrive early, work late, and never complained about the jokes or the stares. During training exercises, she'd watch from the sidelines, her fingers unconsciously touching the patch. Sometimes, late at night in the barracks, she'd trace the edges of the emblem with her fingertip. The other soldiers didn't know that every thread of that patch was earned in blood. They didn't know that she'd sewn it on herself with shaking hands in a field hospital. They didn't know that 3 names were written in permanent marker on the inside of the fabric, names of people who would never come home. CTA Comment Act 1. Have you ever seen a good person treated badly? Type so unfair. The next morning, the logistics sergeant called Isla into his office. "Carter, I need you to remove that patch from your uniform." She looked up from her paperwork. "Sir? Only those who actually served in Grey Wolf are authorized to wear it. I've checked your file. Your logistics, never been special ops." Isla nodded slowly. "Understood, sir." She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just reached up and carefully unpinned the patch from her sleeve. The sergeant watched her fold it with unusual care, like it was made of glass. "Carter, where did you get that patch?" "From a friend, sir." "What friend?" Isla's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "A friend who can't answer questions anymore, sir." That afternoon in the mess hall, the same 3 soldiers were at it again. "Look," she finally took off her little costume piece. "Probably got in trouble for stolen valor. Should have known better than to pretend to be something she's not." Isla was sitting alone, methodically eating her food, when one of them walked over. "Hey, logistics girl. Good thing you took off that patch. You were making real soldiers look bad." She set down her fork. "Is that what you think?" "I know that's what I think." Isla stood up slowly. The mess hall was getting quieter. Other soldiers were starting to notice the confrontation. She turned around. Her hands went to the back of her collar. "You want to know about the Grey Wolf unit?" She pulled her collar down. There, tattooed in deep black ink across her upper back, was the Grey Wolf emblem. But this wasn't just any tattoo. Below the wolf's head were letters and numbers, AM03, 17, EVAC 2. And cutting right through the tattoo was a thick raised scar, a burn scar that looked like it came from an explosion. The 3 soldiers stared. One of them whispered, "That code, that's Almira. The evacuation that was never officially recorded." An older soldier who just walked in saw the tattoo and his face went pale. "Were you at EVAC 2? Isla pulled her collar back up. "I was the only one who came back from EVAC 2. The mess hall was completely silent now. "Almira was classified," the older soldier said quietly. "How do you know about EVAC 2? "Because I called it in." She picked up her tray. "And because I carried 3 of my teammates out of that burning building while calling for backup that never came." The young soldier who'd been taunting her was now staring at the floor. "The patch you were laughing at? It belonged to Sergeant Martinez. He gave it to me right before he died. Asked me to make sure it made it home." She walked toward the exit, then paused. The tattoo? I got it the day after his funeral. The scar? That's from the IED that killed the rest of my unit. CTA Comment Act 2. If you've ever judged someone wrong, type, I was wrong. Word spread through the base in less than 2 hours. By evening, Lieutenant Colonel Monroe, the base commander, was pulling classified files. The red-stamped document that appeared on his screen made him lean back in his chair. Isla Carter Grey Wolf Unit, Operation Almira Evac 2. Sole survivor, credited with saving 3 teammates from hostile territory, declined Medal of Honor. He kept reading. Former combat medic and designated marksman, classified as declined recognition due to personal reasons. Left special operations following unit casualties. The file contained details that made Monroe's blood run cold. Evac 2 wasn't just a rescue mission, it was a disaster. Isla's unit had been ambushed during a humanitarian evacuation. She was the only one who survived the initial attack. While wounded herself, she'd provided medical aid to 3 critically injured teammates, then carried them one by one to the extraction point. The burn scar on her back? That was from going back into a burning building to retrieve classified documents and dog tags. She'd called in her own evacuation while under enemy fire, coordinated air support, and held the landing zone until help arrived. The next morning, the base was different. When Isla walked into the mess hall, conversations stopped. But not because of mockery, because of respect. The 3 soldiers who'd been taunting her were sitting at a corner table, looking miserable. One of them, Private Johnson, stood up as she passed. "Ma'am, I need to apologize." Isla stopped. "You don't owe me an apology, Private." "Yes, I do. I was completely out of line. I had no idea." "You had no idea because I never told you. That was my choice." Johnson looked at his feet. "Ma'am, my brother served overseas. He always said the real heroes never talk about what they did." Isla's expression softened slightly. "Your brother was right. The real heroes are the ones who didn't make it home." She sat down at her usual table. Johnson hesitated, then asked, "Ma'am, would it be okay if we sat with you?" She looked up, surprised. "It's a free country, Private." The 3 soldiers joined her table. Word spread quickly, and soon other soldiers were asking to sit nearby. But Isla didn't want to be treated like a celebrity. "I'm not here to talk about the war," she said quietly. "I'm here to do my job." "Yes, ma'am. But can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why didn't you tell us about your service?" Isla was quiet for a long moment. "Because I didn't serve for recognition. I served because my teammates needed me. And when they died, I survived because they needed me too." She touched the spot where her patch used to be. That patch wasn't mine to wear anymore. It belonged to Martinez. I was just keeping it safe. Later that evening, Lieutenant Colonel Monroe called her into his office. "Carter, I've read your file. All of it. Sir, you know you could have any position you want on this base. Hell, you could probably have any position you want in the entire military. I'm happy in logistics, sir." "Why?" Isla thought about it. "Because in logistics, sir, you make sure people have what they need to come home. Equipment, supplies, support. And that's what you want to do?" "That's what I need to do, sir." CTA Comment Act 3. If someone has ever saved you or inspired you, write, "I owe them." Isla continued her work. No one made jokes anymore. No one questioned her presence. But every morning when she walked into the supply depot, soldiers would nod respectfully. She didn't want the attention, but she understood it. That evening, she found a small box on her desk. Inside was a brand new Grey Wolf patch, carefully hand-stitched with a handwritten note. "Ma'am, you don't have to wear this again, but we wanted you to know that we'll honor what it represents, the way you've always honored it." It was signed by 12 soldiers, including the 3 who had mocked her. Isla held the patch in her hands. She thought about Martinez, about Thompson, about Rodriguez, about the promise she'd made to their families, about the weight of survival. She carefully folded the patch and put it in her pocket, not to wear, but to remember. The next morning, something had changed on the base. Soldiers were more respectful to each other, more careful with their words. The young soldiers who had laughed at her were now the first to help new arrivals. Private Johnson had requested a transfer to the logistics department. "Why?" Isla asked him. "Because you're right, ma'am. Logistics is where you make sure people come home. Isla smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen from her. Welcome to the team, Private. That night, she sat in her barracks and wrote 3 letters. One to Martinez's mother, one to Thompson's wife, one to Rodriguez's daughter. In each letter, she wrote the same thing. He's still with us, still protecting soldiers, still making a difference. She sealed the letters and walked to the mailbox. As she dropped them in, she whispered, "Mission accomplished, guys." CTA Comment Act 4. Type, "I will live better." If you believe every survivor carries a story worth hearing. Some scars are on the skin, some scars are in the ink, and some scars live forever in the heart, even when nobody asks about them. Isla Carter never bragged. She never demanded recognition, but when she was disrespected, she simply turned around and let the truth speak for itself. Never judge someone by their appearance, their voice, or their size. Because sometimes the person everyone laughs at is the same person who once saved the life of the soldier sitting right next to you. The quiet ones often carry the heaviest burdens. The small ones often have the biggest hearts. And the heroes? The real heroes never tell you they're heroes. They just show up, do the work, and carry the weight of the ones who didn't make it home. Remember that. The next time you see someone wearing a patch, carrying a scar, or sitting alone, maybe ask their story instead of assuming you know it. Because everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about.